In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you two supposed Bigfoot pictures that have been shared with me that I'm going to share with you guys. But before we start today's video, if you enjoy storytelling of the mysterious and supernatural, be sure to go ahead and smack that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Now, as a personal precursor to everybody watching this, just know that any picture nowadays can be faked. So, unless I've taken a picture myself, just take every single picture with a grain of salt and for entertainment purposes. Ultimately, it's up to you, the viewer, to decide whether they are true or fake. I am merely just presenting what was given to me. Here we go. I have a good friend of mine who lives in rural Ohio. He has had several experiences with the Bigfoot phenomenon, and I thought you'd be interested to hear about his most recent encounters, which occurred in the summer of 2016. He has some photographs he was able to capture from his trail cam of several of the Bigfoot in the area. This one shown here was taken in the wintertime. What's more interesting is that it appears to have 6 fingers. He also has several other photos of the same creature and others he will be sending. I've been interested in this phenomenon for a long time, but I never thought it would happen so close to where he lives. My friend is an avid hunter who spends most of his free time out on his property hunting deer or just enjoying nature. He tells me he has a huge deer population back there. So he was walking back there from the area when one time he had noticed movement from behind him by about 100 yards, away through some trees. He says that he doesn't often go back there for fear of being watched and followed. He says that there is a family of these things all back there. This other photo that was taken was supposedly taken in late spring, early summertime. I've known this man for quite some time, and it wouldn't be like him to hoax these photos. In fact, I'm the only person he has shared them with and has given me full permission to show them to you and your audience. There's really not much else to the story other than these 2 pictures that were captured and to know that there is a lot of Bigfoot activity on his property. Last I checked up with him earlier this year, it's still going on. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have any more questions or if your audience wants to know any more. Thank you. Story 2. I am a retired police officer and an avid outdoorsman pretty much all my life. I've hunted and fished all over the country, including up in Alaska. And believe me, I've seen and heard many things in my life, but nothing like this. I've been a big fan of your show for years now and have always been fascinated by the subject of Bigfoot. My wife and kids think I'm crazy, but they know that when it comes to the outdoors, I'm a very serious person. To share my story, I was hunting with my brother-in-law in the Salmon River Mountains of Idaho. We were hunting for elk in the mountains, and we had been in the same spot for 2 days. We were not seeing any elk, so we decided to move down into a valley and hunt for deer. It was now about 5 p.m. when we had arrived at our new hunting spot. We were in a small clearing and decided to set up our camp. We had a small fire going and were cooking our dinner when we heard loud crashing noises in the brush nearby. It sounded like something big was moving through the trees, and it sounded very big. We both just looked at each other because we had no idea what it was. We decided to put our dinner away, grabbing our rifles, and walked over to a small rise about 100 yards from our camp. We were both looking at the spot where we heard the noise, and then we both saw it. About 250 yards away, it appeared to be a huge ape creature, very dark brown in color, and looked to be about 7 feet tall. It was running through the trees, and it looked like it was running away from us. It reminded me of a huge ape, but the way it moved was very human. It was moving very quickly, and I think it would have been faster than any human would be in a costume. We both watched it as it ran through the trees, and it was gone from my sight in probably no more than 3 seconds. I looked over at my brother-in-law, and he was just as speechless as I. We had never seen anything like that in our lives, but we both agreed that what we had just seen had to have been a Bigfoot. We decided to go back to camp. We decided to not spend the night in that spot, so we packed up our things and moved to our truck. We left that spot alone. We would go back in the years later, but it always had a weird feeling. It's hard to describe, like we weren't welcome. It was not until that I saw your show that I really knew for sure it was a Bigfoot. I've told many people about my encounter, and most of them think I'm crazy. My family and friends know how I am when it comes to the outdoors. They know that I would not lie about something like this. I have also told them that I would be willing to take a lie detector test about it. I know what I saw, and I will never doubt for a single second that it was not a Bigfoot. Story 3. I was hiking in the woods south of Columbus, Ohio, and I had been walking for about an hour and a half when something had caught my eye up ahead on the trail. It appeared to be like somebody sitting down with their back to me, but the closer I came, it appeared not to be human, because they were so dark in color, like somebody wearing a huge jacket of some kind. And then the closer I got, I realized it was black fur, and immediately became on guard because I thought it was a black bear. I stopped dead still, and as soon as I saw this thing and watched it from behind some trees, I could tell it wasn't a black bear at all, but something that appeared to be eating a dead deer with its hands, like the way a person would. It did not seem to be aware that I was watching him or it, so after standing motionless for several moments, trying not to make any noise or sudden movement whatsoever, I slowly began backing away, until eventually turning around completely and heading out of the woods altogether. It's hard for me to say how tall it was exactly, since I never made direct contact, but based upon my initial observation while hiding, it appeared maybe 7.5 to 8 feet tall. The creature's body was not like a black bear at all. It appeared very muscular, yet lean at the same time, which led me to believe that its arms were much longer than a normal person's. I saw somewhat of a side profile of the face. It was flat and had a nose very similar to ours. However, I was not able to see the eyes or really anything else. It was just covered in thick black hair, much the same way a bear would. After leaving those woods immediately, I went home and then returned the next day. The deer and whatever was there the day before were now gone. There was no trace or tracks in the area. This is really strange for me because I frequent the area a lot and have never had something like this happen before, until this day. Story 4. I've been a long-time listener of your YouTube channel. In fact, it was through your channel that I discovered many amazing paranormal authors and books. I am also now an avid believer in the paranormal and have had a multitude of experiences. However, I will skip the boring introductories. In keeping up with the paranormal nature of your channel, I hereby submit the following strange experience that occurred several years ago, which I have not disclosed to anyone else other than a close friend. You see, this was back in 2004. When I was driving home from work one night, I had taken a shortcut through this old abandoned cemetery. I had been down this road many times before and, of course, never saw anything out of the ordinary. But on this particular night, something had caught my eye. As I drove by, I noticed what appeared to be a large bird perched atop one of the gravestones. It was too dark to really make out what it was, other than that it seemed like a giant blackbird. It was just so strange and out of place due to its size. So I decided to stop and slow down and take a closer look. As I was about to get out of my car, I now could see that this was not a large blackbird at all, but some kind of creature I have never seen before. In fact, I dare say it was very reminiscent of a gargoyle, about the size of a human. It had very extended arms and legs, and its head kind of had this beak shape to it. I stood there immediately frozen in fear, not knowing what to do next. Then, without warning, the creature turns and looks right at me with these almost piercing amber eyes. The way it made me feel was otherworldly. It felt like it was peering into my very soul. In this instant, I knew deep down I was dealing with something of the supernatural. Then, the sound of crunching gravel startled me, and I turned to see a car coming down the road. The headlights illuminated the creature, and it seemed to be paralyzed by the light. Taking advantage of the moment, I put my car in drive and sped away. As I looked back in my rearview mirror, the creature was now completely gone. Ever since that night, I have wondered what that creature was and where it came from. Was it some kind of alien, a demon, perhaps a guardian, or something else entirely? I may never know for sure, but one thing is certain. I will never forget the terror I felt when I looked into its eyes. Story 5. For the sake of this story, you can call me Zach. For the record, I didn't really believe in any of this stuff, but what happened to me one summer night back in 2013 still gives me the creeps. I was out for a drive with my girlfriend at the time, and we were taking the back roads because she wanted to show me a shortcut that she knew. It was getting late, and I remember telling her that we should probably turn around soon. But she was insistent that we were almost there, and I trusted her, so we kept driving. We came to an older fork in the road. She told me to take a left, and I did, and I nearly regretted it. The road was pretty narrow than the one we had been on, and thickly lined with trees that blocked out the moonlight. I could barely see where I was going, but my girlfriend assured me that this was the way. I drove for what felt like forever, but was probably only about 20 minutes. We came to a small clearing, and in the center of it was a large structure that looked like it might have once been a church. In fact, it was an abandoned church. But there was something off about it, because not only had it looked abandoned and overtaken by nature, but there was an eerie presence or feeling in the air. In fact, the entire place felt eerie, and I kept feeling like we were being watched the whole time. I asked my girlfriend if this was where we're supposed to be, but she insisted that it was. In fact, she had told me she had had her take her on the shortcut because she actually wanted to explore this location. I didn't want to go inside that church, but my girlfriend was adamant that we should. And before she could even get out of the car, because she's crazy, we both hear this loud scream or screech coming from the distance. It sounded close by, and immediately I yanked my girlfriend back in the car. And just in that very moment, we could both see this large black mass ascending above the trees, heading in our direction. "What is that?" I shouted as I frantically tried to start the car. The engine sputtered but didn't turn over. I looked over at my girlfriend, and she was petrified in fear. This creature was getting closer and closer, and I could see it more clearly now, despite the dying light. It was huge, with leathery black wings and what appeared to be glowing amber eyes. It looked like something out of a nightmare. Very quickly, it descended upon us, and I thought for sure we were going to perish. But then, just as quickly as it had appeared, it flew away. I don't know what the thing was, but it was definitely after us. I got the car started, and we took off down the road as fast as we could. But this thing was right behind us, flying close to the ground and keeping pace with the car. No matter how fast we drove, we could not shake it. And suddenly, the creature swoops down and nearly smashes into our windshield, causing us to swerve and nearly hitting a tree and almost flipping. My girlfriend was sobbing uncontrollably and praying at this point, and I was trying to think of what to do. I realized that at this point, we were not far from a smaller town. I told my girlfriend we're going to make it. I drove the car as fast as I could into town, with this thing right behind us the whole way. It lands on our roof, and I could feel the claw marks tearing into the roof of our car. This thing was literally trying to rip off the roof, and I could feel it. I finally had to swerve really hard to fling it off the top before it disappeared entirely. My girlfriend and I were both shaking and crying by the time we made it. We went to the police station and told them what had happened. They said they had no idea what we were talking about. They didn't really believe us. But we know what we saw, and we'll never forget that night. We didn't say a word to each other the whole way home. That night changed both of us, and we never spoke of it again. Whatever that thing was, it was not a normal animal. It was not a bird. I believe it was some demonic entity, maybe even a demon itself. It was after us, and I'm sure of that. There's really no other explanation. Later on, we found out through word of mouth that this old abandoned church we encountered is a hotspot for the paranormal, missing animals, and supposed occult rituals in the woods. I can't verify that for certain, but I've spoken to some more notable people around my area. They've told me about weird screams and things that happen around here. After what we went through, I believe them. For the sake of other people, I'm not going to be revealing the location in case anybody else wants to try and go there themselves. It's not worth it. But I will say that it's located in southern Ohio.